Welcome back, Global War 1939. Just finished off round two. So let's take a look here. So for the Germans, they didn't really do a lot. They did a big purchase. Typically, after the first round, the Germans are very low on their core uh, army types. So low on infantry. They start the game with only 5 tanks. You do purchase 6 in the first round. So that is something, but they went ahead and purchased a few more just to bolster up those ranks, because your army or your tank corps is vital for the upcoming war against the Russians, and of course your infantry are too. The infantry will take your hits. So they started the round because of the purchase from, or the money they stole from France, the bonuses, and of course their national income. They did have $91. So they purchased mostly infantry, a bunch of tanks. You can see we have 5 tanks here. They did purchase the next level up of 2. We're only allowed to purchase 2 per turn. And we also went with SS mechs. We got 2 of those, and SS infantry. So the 2 upgraded tanks, the 2 SS mechs, and 1 infantry. That's a pretty typical buy. As the Germans, I like to buy those 5 units every round, and it costs 25. And then the rest they threw in infantry, some artillery, and of course mostly armor. They did take out Greece for the Italians, so they would have one less thing to worry about. And of course, the Italians on the previous turn took out Marseille. This did stick with the Allies, so the Axis needed to remove that small little threat. And if the Italians allowed the Germans to do it, they'll be kind of like a bit behind trying to get units to Russia. So the Germans and the Italians kind of flip these territories, allowing the Italians to net $1 extra compared to the previous games. Anyways, they took the newly acquired fleet and the fleet from Sea Zone 14, brought them all together. They're now in 17. So this is probably, out of all the games, this is probably the biggest German fleet that we have access to. So we're going to utilize that. Probably go on a couple suicide squads, because the British have mustered up their navy again sizably. So the Germans want to strike this before this gets too big to deal with. For the Russians, they built up more along Finland. However, they've been rolling extremely well this game. We're about to enter round 3, and the Russians are sitting at $43. So after this roll, unless they're rolling 1s and 2s, they're going to be in the war after this round. And just as an example, right, that would put them in the war. So the Germans typically, they like to wait till turn 4, possibly push to turn 5. That way they can have a massive army just to roll in there, because at that point, after turn 5, you got quite a few $100 invested into your tanks and infantry and just ready to go. They're obviously going to have to go way early than they want. So this could benefit the Russians. Yes, the downside, the Russians don't have as much time to build up either. But compared to the last games, the Russians have been having quite a bit of money to invest in their military, as opposed to only the $12 or $15 they've had before. All right, and now for China, India. China just solidified their wall. They brought up some more of their fighting force, so their cavalry and an artillery got their fighter a little bit closer, just trying to defend this passageway, and just trying to slow the Japanese down as much as possible. FEC kind of did the same thing, just brought up more forces. But they do need to make sure this territory stays on the Allied side, as it does give China quite a bit of money. It also gives them access to artillery, and if the Americans wish to purchase light armor for the Chinese. But the road needs to be open. So all these territories need to stay in Allied hands. They do need to make sure this stays Allied. The fleet, this is the combination of the Mediterranean and the Indian fleet. They're kind of formed together. They do have a couple ships down belong to the Dutch, so they're all going to meet up and possibly take on the Italians or circle all the way around to take on the Germans. And we will see. We'll see how all that plays out. They did solidify the rest of Iran, so the entirety of the Middle East is now under British control, and they do get a sizable bonus for owning these 4 territories. That's the reason why they went into Iraq now on turn 1, as opposed to waiting until turn 7, where the Iraqis will flip sides, become pro-allied, and they can just walk in. But you're kind of giving up 6 turns worth of a bonus, so they're going to take advantage of that. As for the Japanese, they did spread out, taking out a few more islands, relying heavily on bombardments and Air Force. They went into both territories kind of low on infantry, only 2 here and 2 here, but 4 bombardments there, 4 here, 2 fighters. The defending force didn't really stand much of a chance. So only 2 islands left, and there should be no reason why they can't take these out now. One's just a walk-on. And then they'll sight their eyes on New Guinea. They do want to take at least one of these away, because Australia does get a small bonus for owning these islands. So they want to deprive them of that. They're not really worried about the Americans at this point. The Americans are right now sitting at 47. So they're still definitely a ways to go. They're more than halfway to hit their 80 mark. Certainly a couple more turns. So this does give the Japanese some time to make inroads into India and into China, and solidifying the rest of these money islands. For purchases, the Japanese, they didn't go really heavy into their navy. They did purchase a couple of destroyers, but they focused a lot on army-based units. So a couple of artillery. They got a couple of they got a paratrooper here, another one over here. Because even if you're using the paratrooper not as a paratrooper, just as a land-based infantry, their stats are quite good for the extra dollar. So it's quite like you want to buy as much of these as you're allowed. They do have an excellent defense role and a really good attacking role. So definitely worth the investment into that. They brought out a couple destroyers here to take this guy, move him into China. He's not really doing much good here. This island's not really worth anything. Yes, you are giving it a walk-on to the Allies. They could use it as a landing base to get their aircraft closer to Japan or any other island. So then by vacating all these islands here, then you're really putting a lot of responsibility on the Navy to prevent any landings into these islands in the first place. Because really one infantry is not really going to stop a landing force, especially if you're landing with 2 transports worth of units, right? So I like to take all the infantry that you start here, bring them into China, because they'll give you more use over here than in the open, and just rely on your Navy to prevent all these landings. Communist China didn't really do much. They just stuck with where they were. They didn't actually move. They saved up their income. So right now there weren't in any real position to actually attack. Basically, what they're going to do, because infantry are better on defense, so they're going to wait for the Japanese to attack. Hopefully, get 1 or 2 hits in before losing these 2, and then counterattack. That's their plan. Really, the communist China are just there to slow down the Japanese. Um, I don't think anyone is in any illusion that the communist Chinese are going to make any big moves, right? Um, the Russians here again, they just got another buildup. They will go into Finland, possibly this turn, and then to prevent a German invasion up north. They don't really have a lot. The Germans, they got a couple of artillery, a couple of fighters. The fighter that they start with in Romania, they did bring that up, and a stack of infantry. And this is what's currently in Leningrad. So most of their air force, heavy artillery, 6 infantry, mechanized, 2 light tanks, and 2 artillery. And these 6 tanks are right now sitting in this territory, making its way to Romania to make the major strike into Russia. So the Germans they're not really ready, but they're going to be forced their hand based off the die rolls. So we'll see how all that plays out. For the Americans in the Pacific, just mustered up their Navy, bunched it all together. Their income this last turn, they didn't really have a lot. So they mostly put it in the Atlantic. They did buy another cruiser, a couple more infantry, some more Marines. So they're going to have to start investing into a more sizable Navy, especially the Germans have the biggest Navy that they've ever had. So instead of slowly relying on the British to knock that out, they're going to have to assist them in any way they can, and then, of course, invest into their transports. As for the Italians, they got some more advanced units. They poured their money into a medium tank, but the medium tanks for most nations are not that expensive, and they are quite effective. However, for the Italians, they are very expensive for the stats that you get. So they only purchased 1, and they got 2 heavy artillery to help them make roads into Cairo. And they got down another military base, so now they can purchase up to 5 units in this area, and then, of course, whatever they pick up in Italy, and they can transport down. Right now, they are sitting with 3 transports, so maybe 1 more should be able to do it, especially from this point onward. Most of their income is going to be put towards infantry and artillery, so they'll be able to quickly transport things around. So we'll see how all that plays out. And for Anzac, they did capture 1 Japanese island, and a transport moved it up. So this is a pretty standard move. Probably going here, maybe. They're going to see what the Japanese Navy does, see where they land. And because, yes, they wouldn't mind taking this island, to take another dollar away from the Axis into the hands of the Allies. Great. But is it really worth losing your entire Navy for $1? We'll have to see what the Japanese does. All right. Well, that is, and for up here, the British, they didn't do anything in their home island. They did purchase 1 extra infantry because they had a couple of dollars left over, and they maxed out all their other production facilities. Canada purchased another transport, as well as the British. So the British, they were actually going to do something else with that $7, but they decided to get the 8th transport, which gives all of the United Kingdom countries an extra bonus. So it's definitely was well worth it picking that up, because they get an extra 5, they get an extra 1. And he gets an extra couple of dollars, and same with Anzac. So definitely you make more money than what you wouldn't if you didn't, like, if they didn't purchase that 8th transport. But that's about it. The British up here are going to have to win the Battle of the Atlantic before they can start thinking about landing to help out the Russians. So we will see. All right. Well, thank you for watching and have yourself a great day.